In the world of the Comanche, becoming a warrior was not merely a rite of passage into adulthood, but a journey steeped in honor, blood rights, and the pursuit of ultimate courage. To be recognized as a true warrior, one had to wield weapons in both the hunt and on the battlefield, shedding blood in the process. This was a world where no shortcuts existed, and only those who emerged victorious from deadly encounters could earn the respect of their people. War was not a random or sporadic occurrence for the Comanche. It was deeply ingrained in their culture, interwoven with their customs, rituals, and spiritual beliefs, becoming an inseparable aspect of their lives. The very survival of the tribe depended on their ability to fight, to protect their lands, preserve their honor, and avenge their enemies. For the Comanche, bravery was more than a trait. It was a defining principle of life. Boys were trained from an early age to master horseback, riding, and archery, essential skills that would one day make them formidable warriors. Their society valued strength, endurance, and cunning, with young boys constantly tested through games and mock battles designed to prepare them for real warfare. Success in these trials was celebrated, while failure was met with scorn. The harsh environment of the plains, where survival itself was a daily challenge, further hardened these young warriors, shaping them into fearless combatants, ready to defend their people. As settlers expanded westward, they quickly realized that the Comanche territories were more than mere borders on a map. These lands were battlegrounds where life and death were separated by the edge of a blade. The Comanche, mounted on swift horses, seemed to appear like ghosts and vanish just as quickly, leaving a trail of blood and ash in their wake. Over the decades, they became an impenetrable barrier against the relentless tide of western migration. Settlers lived in constant fear, their lives hanging by a thread as Comanche raids struck without warning. In some years, the death toll climbed into the hundreds, leaving behind shattered families and abandoned settlements. Thousands were taken captive, men, women, and children, spirited away to the vast plains, where they faced lives of servitude or worse. Farms were set ablaze, livestock driven off, and homes reduced to smoldering ruin. The Comanche's mastery of warfare ensured that no frontier homestead was truly safe. The settlers, who had come seeking new beginnings, found themselves locked in a brutal struggle for survival. The Comanche remained dominant until the tides began to turn with the arrival of new enemies. Hardened Texans and the Texas Rangers, who adopted Comanche tactics, fighting from horseback and launching swift, decisive attacks. The balance of power shifted even further when the Americans armed themselves with the Colt revolver, a rapid-firing weapon that rivaled the deadly Comanche bows. While steel and gunpowder changed the nature of warfare, another silent enemy proved even more devastating: disease. Smallpox and cholera tore through the Comanche bands, leaving entire camps decimated. Faced with dwindling numbers and unrelenting pressure, some Comanche bands began to consider abandoning raiding and adopting farming. But to the young warriors, this idea was abhorrent. They were born to ride, hunt, and fight, not to till field. The outbreak of the American Civil War reshaped the conflict along the Texas frontier. Thousands of young Texan men were pulled away to fight in distant battles, leaving the frontier dangerously exposed. Desperate to secure peace, both Union and Confederate governments made promises to the Comanche, offering gifts and supplies in exchange for a halt to the raids. However, promises made by white men were often broken, and supplies were scarce or never arrived. By 1862, the balance of power had shifted, and the settlers found themselves vulnerable. For the Comanche, this was not a time for compromise, but a time for war. By 1863, Chaos engulfed the Texas frontier. Emboldened by the weakened state of the settlers, the Comanche launched a relentless wave of rage. Historian T.R. Fehrenbach described the situation starkly, noting that by 1863, many northwestern counties were under virtual siege. Cattle theft, arson, and murder became common occurrences, spreading terror throughout the region. Isolated farms and settlements fell one by one, with survivors either killed or driven eastward in desperation. Amid this turmoil, a Comanche war chief named Little Buffalo emerged as one of the last great leaders of his people. He believed it was time to strike a decisive blow against the settlers, but no raid could begin without a sign from the spirits. He waited patiently, seeking guidance from the natural world, perhaps a vision, an omen, or a fierce animal crossing his path. Only when the spirits gave their blessing would he call his warriors to war. In Comanche society, war was deeply spiritual. Every raid began with sacred rituals and ceremonies. Before each battle, the warriors gathered around a roaring bonfire for the war dance, a ritual of transformation that turned men into warriors. Their faces painted black, the color of death, they chanted and leaped in unison, summoning the spirits of their ancestors. Encircling them, the women chanted with equal intensity, encouraging their men with shouts of pride and defiance. Cries of warriors and women merged into a singular voice of war and destiny. On a late autumn night, under the eerie light of a full moon, Little Buffalo and his war party rode out. Each warrior brought at least 3 horses to ensure strength and endurance for the journey. Their target, the settlement along Elm Creek. As they rode silently through the night, hooves pounding like distant thunder, they vanished into the vast, shadowy plains, driven by honor, vengeance, and the hope of claiming glory. By dawn, the war party reached the settlement. The first settlers they encountered, a father and his 2 sons, fled into the brush, avoiding immediate slaughter. But not all were so fortunate. Mr. Myers, a settler searching for a missing dog, was caught unaware and brutally killed. His scalped body was left as a grim warning. Moving swiftly, the war party approached the Fitzpatrick home. Despite the bravery of a white woman who stormed out with a rifle, she was overwhelmed and killed. The Comanche seized several captives, women and children, stripped them of their clothing, and tied them to their horses. As the war party pressed on, they encountered the Hames homestead. Unlike previous targets, the Hames were prepared. Thornton Hames, a Confederate soldier home on leave, and his father stood armed and ready. Despite being outnumbered, they fought fiercely, holding their ground and retreating slowly. Their defiance delayed the Comanche long enough for another settler, Doc Wilson, to warn nearby homesteads. Wilson's warning came at the cost of his life, as he was struck by a Comanche arrow during the retreat to the Bragg Ranch. The settlers fortified themselves inside the Bragg Ranch cabin, a small but sturdy structure. Little Buffalo's warriors launched a relentless assault, but the settlers, aided by women reloading rifles, held firm. Gunfire echoed through the plains as the Comanche surged forward. Yet, despite their fierce resolve, the Comanche faced heavy losses. The tide turned when Little Buffalo was struck by a bullet and fell. His death shattered the warrior's spirit. Believing that the spirits had abandoned them, the Comanche retreated, leaving behind a devastated but surviving group of settlers. The raid on Elm Creek followed the brutal formula of classic Comanche warfare: swift, overwhelming, and merciless. Yet, it marked a turning point. The death of Little Buffalo and the fierce resistance at Bragg Ranch signaled a shift in the conflict. Though the Comanche would continue to fight, their era of dominance was waning. Retreating into the vast wilderness, they left behind scorched earth, shattered lives, and a haunting legacy of frontier warfare. Under the pale light of the waning moon, the Comanche war party scattered across the plains, burdened with stolen goods, horses, and captives. Following time-honored tactics, they split into smaller groups to evade pursuit. Their retreat, though swift, was not born of defeat, but a calculated strategy for survival. Along the way, they encountered more settlers, claiming additional lives and trophies before vanishing into the expansive plains of Comancheria. The raid had ended, but its echoes of terror and bloodshed would linger for generations, a stark reminder of the relentless and unforgiving world of the Comanche. As the survivors of the Elm Creek raid gathered to mourn their dead and rebuild what little remained of their homes, the stark reality of frontier life became clearer than ever. Life on the frontier was not merely a test of endurance, but a constant battle against an unforgiving enemy and an unforgiving land. Though weakened by disease, diminishing numbers, and relentless attacks from the settlers and Texas Rangers, the Comanche would not fade into history without a final, fierce resistance. For the Comanche, every battle, every raid, and every loss was part of a broader struggle to preserve their way of life against a world that sought to erase it.